After the horrendous offensive showing on Sunday, it feels like the writing is on the wall that this offense cannot reach its full potential with Greg Roman at the reins.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, man? Welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 years, but this is our 8th season as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day as part of the #1 sports podcast network. Thank you to all the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcasts from. David, what do we got today?
After a beatdown like that, you're always going to have more questions than answers. But I think one question that's definitely on our mind is Greg Roman the right man to run this Chargers offense? And how much blame does Joe Hortiz have in this? And also, can Omarion Hampton's return bring some much needed juice to this Chargers offense? We're going to talk about that. And also, how well the Chargers are going to be able to fare with a tough schedule down the stretch.
Man, the wins are starting to get a lot harder to pick out when you're looking at this Chargers schedule, especially coming off of that game. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. David, it is Buy or Sell Tuesday, getting into the biggest Chargers storylines and overreactions. And of course, after that game, there are going to be some that I don't believe are overreactions and are valid storylines to be following, including this one from Voodoo, who says, buy or sell, Greg Roman is on the hot seat with inconsistency the offenses from week to week and even quarter to quarter. So I think this, on face value, seems like a bit of an overreaction because of it's coming off of such a horrendous kind of one game. But I think the reason to me it's not an overreaction is because this isn't a one game sample. This is a 25-game sample, right? This is to the beginning of last year and what we've seen from them this year. And I understand that the Chargers offense is behind the 8 ball. You cannot replace 2 all-pro tackles. He doesn't have what he needs to work with up front, of course. That being said, he does not know how to consistently get the most out of that group or consistently be able to run his offense with what he has. And more importantly than that, consistently find a way to protect his quarterback, because sometimes offense has to be the expense of saving your quarterback. When you're not getting offense and your quarterback's getting bludgeoned, it's too much. And I think just at this point for me, it's a hire that I didn't love when it happened. I think you have to be open to the possibility that even with as many offenses that Justin Herbert has had to learn, this still might not be the right one.
Yeah, you definitely have to consider that. And I mean, for any offensive coordinator to lose both of their all-star tackles and both of their running backs for most of the year or all of the year is a really tough spot to be in. But with that being said, we've seen some mechanisms that have worked, but he's kind of gone away from some of those things. The max protections, utilizing the tight ends to help with that protection, getting the ball out of your quarterback's hands quickly and into the hands of playmakers. Some of these things we've seen not be used when they absolutely should be used. Right now, when you have obvious deficiencies on offense, you got to kind of have to play with the stuff that works. You got to play the hits. And I don't think that we've seen that enough in an effort to try to protect your quarterback.
They had 8 first downs on Sunday. Like, it's just inexcusable. They had 9 drives and 8 first downs. Yeah, they had 135 total yards, 3.0 yards per play. Last year, they were a little bit deficient in weapons, but guess what? They had Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt for most of the season. And how many scoreless halves did we have to endure where we were having this same conversation? I think he's been better this year. I'll say that on the front end. I still don't think it's good enough, and I still don't think it's the right fit to get what they need to and get to where they need to go under his tutelage. And I think, other teams like the Ravens and, teams in the past have found that out later rather than sooner. And I think it has to be on the table. So far this year, Chargers 20th in points per game. They're tied in 10th in yards per carry as far as rushing yards and 15th in total rushing yards, but 21st in non-quarterback rushing EPA, which means Justin Herbert is basically the reason that you're a top 10 yards per carry team, because when you're not talking about his scrambling, the actual running game has just been too inconsistent. 21st in EPA per play, 27th in red zone EPA, 26th in red zone touchdown percentage. Like, we're having this conversation now. It's going to be an uglier conversation. It could be after you play a team like the Broncos again, or the Eagles coming up, or the Texans who already bludgeoned you last year. We could be in for some pretty rough outings for this offense coming up here, which is going to make this conversation, I think, a lot more relevant. But it's not all on Greg Roman. I just think that we've seen the Greg Roman experiment, and I'm willing to try a different one now. So let's get to this one here from Athir, another potential overreaction here, where he says, I should say in all caps, Daniel, David, buy or sell Tuesday and overreaction. Joe Hortiz should be on the hot seat going into next offseason, because this offseason was disastrous. So I do think this is an overreaction, but I do want to talk about this because of the blame and, where the blame should be spread to and who deserves kind of what, because I don't think it's all on Greg Roman. Obviously, he went into this season, besides the all-pro level kind of tackles that he had, with the same deficient interior offensive line that really got them killed last year outside of Mekhi Becton, and he's a different story that we'll talk about. What I would say, though, is he has done so well in the draft that, like, it makes this conversation a non-starter. The Chargers had too many empty calories in the draft under Tom Telesco. They have hits on hits under this new guy in Joe Hortiz when you're talking about Joe Alt, Inland McConkey, and Justin Eboigbe, Cam Hart, Tarheeb Still, Kamani Vidal, Omarion Hampton, Trey Harris, Jamari Caldwell, Aronde Gaston, RJ Mickens. Those are all guys who have played meaningful snaps and played well at times for you. So I agree. I think he did not do a good enough job in this free agency or the offseason in general in taking care of what the Chargers' biggest flaw was last season. But I think he's far from being on the hot seat, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think he's in the hot seat at all. I mean, you just mentioned all of the fantastic picks that he's already made within the first 2 years of being the general manager. I mean, obviously, there's a couple out there that kind of stick out, like Junior Colson obviously hasn't been able to stay on the field, and maybe that pick would have been better served to be used for an offensive lineman to give some protection for Justin. Obviously, hindsight is always 20/20 as well, and with Kyle Kennard, another situation, you draft a pass rusher who has played 25 snaps this season. I mean, then that's another spot. But besides that, you can't really say much about the drafting strategy. Besides, obviously, outside of Joe Alt, you only drafted one other offensive lineman, and he didn't make the team. So that's definitely something that you have to consider. But I think to me, what's been a little bit more, I guess, puzzling is his utilization of the cap space and how he's kind of made some of these bargain bin signings when he's had more money to play with. And I think that's something to pay attention to until this offseason, where he has a gigantic amount of money again in cap space, which, I mean, at least, according to reports, is expected to be north of $100 million. Then if he doesn't go out there and make some serious reinforcements on the offensive line with the money available at that point, then I'm going to have some much bigger questions. But Joe Hortiz is definitely not the person to be mad at from what we've seen so far.
I definitely don't think he's the first person you point to, but I think the part that's going to live in infamy is obviously the presser with, Daniel Popper, where he, is questioned about the interior of the offensive line and said, I thought we were pretty good, Pop. 11 wins, right? You can't look that egotistical while ignoring something that, of course, instantly became one of the biggest issues on your roster yet again. You just can't do it. And there is something to be said about building it the right way. And I think that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to desperately avoid these big time contracts that Tom Telesco whiffed on in the past, where you have a bunch of dead money because you're cutting guys after 2 years and a 4-year contract. And they're trying to, building through the draft is a process that's going to take more time. You have to be able to find better band-aids than what they've been able to do. You have to be able to find better options and more competition than what he was able to do in free agency, especially on the interior of that offensive line. And just offensively in general, I think he has to be a lot better with the guys that he picks up in free agency. They've been able to, that's a coaching or GM thing, because there's been plenty of bargain guys on defense who have gone out there and really balled out. So it just depends where you're looking. Joe Hortiz has to be better in free agency, but man, that man has been a wizard in the draft. One more draft class feels like it's going to have this team feeling like an entirely different roster. 3 draft classes of Joe Hortiz. The Chargers are looking much better, I think, in 2026. But we still have more to get into because the Chargers do have some reinforcements. How much of an impact can Omarion Hampton make? We're getting into all that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your bets into a same game parlay for an even bigger shot at the payout, or you can just go through and build a 15-plus point parlay builder. For example, you go with Austin Reeves, LeBron James, Steph Curry, Cade Cunningham to all score at least 15 points. All those are basically locks for the most part on most nights. You can get that by combining them at minus 118. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. But right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. David, there's still more overreactions and storylines to get into, of course. I mean, we had so many. Thank you to the everydayers out there for not just helping us helping make us the #1 sports podcast network, but being able to have a show like this and have so many good options for buy or sells that we're not going to be able to fit all of them on the show today. Maybe we'll repurpose them for later on in the week because we just had so many good ones. But I think this is another one that's, I think, very present on many people's minds right now from Frankie Ruiz, who says, buy or sell, Omarion Hampton's return will change the rest of our season and give our defense more rest. David, are you buying or selling that?
Man, that's a gigantic statement to make. Change the rest of the season. I think that Omarion Hampton is a fantastic player, and he will absolutely make the offense look better, but he's not going to be able to mask all of the deficiencies alone by himself. He's not going to be able to open up the holes for himself, right? He does a great job of, I think, doing more with less as far as running through holes that are maybe not there for other players, and he has that burst and he has that home run ability. I think what I'm excited about is him as a receiver, being an outlet for Justin Herbert, get the ball out of his hands quickly, get to a running back that can do something in the open field and make people miss. He was, 6.8 yards per reception, 20 receptions for 136 yards. That's pretty solid work. For a running back. And I just think that I want to see more of that and just having another playmaker on the field. If you're not going to have the offensive line, which, at this point they are who they are what they are have shown us to be, then you want to get everybody that you possibly can back to give you as much offensive juice and hopefully a little more balance to your offense. Obviously, Omarion Hampton hopes to bring that.
Yeah, and, bring some fresh legs after missing some time like this. It seems like they definitely took their time, and we still need to, get official word that they're going to open up the window. But the messaging pretty much throughout has been after the bye week since we heard the last update from Jim Harbaugh. But I do think that as far as him kind of saving this offense, I don't necessarily see it, but what I do think, kind of to your point, is we did see that like he can be the engine of an offense and can give the Chargers something, to your point, in the passing game. I mean, in the 2 games before his injury, he combined for 294 yards of offense. I don't need to remind you, the Chargers had 135 total yards of offense in this last game that they played. So between running the ball and catching it out of the backfield and the explosive ability, the ability to pick up the chunk plays they just have not been able to get without him. Yeah, it does make a big difference. But he also can't save an offensive line that, PFF grades have to be taken with a grain of salt, obviously. But when you see your team being compared to the rest of the teams on the same grading scale, and you see the Chargers grade out as the worst run blocking offensive line or just team in the NFL, they're at 41.6. The 30th ranked team, the third to worst team, is 51.7. There's a 10-point gap between you and the third worst team. There's only so much he can be able to do. I think it looks better with him, but he's not a fix-all, right? Because, This wasn't just this last game. Like, look at the Commanders game. Look at the Giants game. Like, there's been so many constipated offensive performances, not even going back to last year. He can't fix it by himself, but he does make you better. And I think as far as, like, the defense getting rest and stuff, like, in the first 3 drives of the second half, the Chargers possessed the ball for 2 minutes and 57 seconds, right? That's insane. They did not give their defense any rest.
No.
It's not an excuse, though. I mean, the Chargers gave up 2 touchdowns after the only 2 4+ minute drives the Chargers had on Sunday, and they gave up a touchdown and a huge drive right after halftime when they should have been plenty rested. So I'm not going to buy too much into that because going into it, the Chargers led the league and still actually do in time of possession for their offense. So let's get to this next one here from John Eakins, who says, no player on the active roster as an offensive lineman will be here next year or should be. So obviously we're taking out, Joe All and Rashawn Slater, and everyone else, David, they can clean house. What do you think?
I'm with it. Honestly, I'm 100% okay with it. I think if we were to make one concession, I think I would be okay with potentially bringing back Zion Johnson. I think he's been decent so far this year. I think he's been the most consistent player on the offensive line, which is not saying much for the worst offensive line in the league, but I would be completely okay with completely remaking this entire offensive line outside of the tackles on the outside. I'm still a firm believer in Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater. I know he's coming back from a serious injury, but if anybody can come back and be the same dude or close to it, it's a monster like Rashawn Slater. And so my money is on him to come back and be that guy, but they need a much better center and they need way better guard play from both of the guards. I feel like it's a situation where they have to inject some serious capital and resources into it. If you are wanting to claim to be a team that is built off of your offensive line, then I need to see an offensive line that can go out there and dominate like the Eagles' offensive line did last year.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously that was, an all-time offensive line for sure, but like, I don't even need that. Give me the 15th ranked offensive line in the league and watch this team be able to make a playoff run. Like, give me just at the bottom of the barrel. Like, I mean, honestly, like even with Zion Johnson, he's going to cost way too much to go get out in the open market just as a competent guard who we used to, was a former first-round pick, because we know that carries into free agency as well.
Yeah.
He's going to make $15, $16, $17 million. I'm not bringing him back for that. I mean, and like the thing is, too, is you only have Bradley Bozeman and Mekhi Becton as far as guys under contract outside of your tackles going into 2026. So, like, most of these guys are probably going to be gone just because their contracts are running out and probably don't deserve to be brought back. And, like, in the case of Mekhi Becton, he's been a huge disappointment. Like, he can't stay in. I still think he's their best option at guard when they have him. But, like, I mean, man, the last 2 games that he's actually played 40+ snaps, which has been a rarity for him this season, he's given up 5+ pressures. Like, he was pretty good in this last game. Couldn't finish the game. He was pretty good the last game. He had to leave with injury, less than 10 snaps.
Yeah, I think it's 4 of the 6 games he's left early or played less than 100% of the snaps.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's played more than 6, but yeah, I mean, that percentage-wise is definitely sounding right to me. I mean, there's definitely more games that he started than, and there's more games that he hasn't finished than games that he has finished so far this season. So, like, it hasn't been great, and the metrics hate him as well. They have him as the 3rd worst guard in the league of anyone with 400 snaps. So, again, I don't put too much stock into Pro Football Focus grades, just straight up grades like that. But, like, it's just, you get tired of seeing all of the Chargers players, like, near or at the very, very bottom of these lists, because that's not a fluke. You're not playing great, and they're grading you as the worst player at your position.
If everybody's saying the same thing, then it's probably true.
Well, and just trust your eyes. I mean, I think the hard thing is just when everyone is this bad, it's like hard to kind of, split up the blame because there's kind of failures all around. But let's get to this one quickly from Leo Martinez. We'll do a quick buy or sell here, David. Buy or sell, Greg Roman, Mike Devlin, and Bradley Bozeman will all be back on the Chargers next season.
Absolutely not. I think at least two of the 3 of those guys are gone, and I think my money is on Mike Devlin and Bradley Bozeman. I think both those guys are gone. I still think, just given the relationship between Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman, that there is a chance that he will return for another season.
Yeah, I mean, there's not. I'll say this right now: there's a non-0% chance that all three of these guys are back. I mean, Bradley Bozeman is under contract, even if they don't think he's a starting center. That's not a guarantee they're going to cut him. Mike Devlin, it's been awful. Greg Roman, you already heard my thoughts on that. Go and get the recently relieved Bill Callahan to be your offensive line coach. You can't spend 2 years seeing this trio underperform and decide to run it back again in 2026. It just makes no sense. But the Chargers have their work cut out for them down the stretch. Coming up, we're going to be getting into how bad it could get potentially. Could the Chargers realistically go 1-5 in their last 6 games? All that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over there at Peloton. Look, folks, it's time to break through the busiest time of the year with a brand new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus that's powered by Peloton IQ. It's Peloton's most elevated technology and equipment yet that gives you real-time guidance, and it gives you endless ways to move, whether you want to work out by yourself or if you want to work out with your favorite instructor, like my personal favorite, Alex Toussaint. He always gets me fired up to tackle the day. And the thing I like about Peloton, it helps me achieve more in less times. They have features that help you plan, stay motivated, track your progress, and Peloton IQ also provides personalized workout plans and recommendations. That's something that I use right now during the busiest time of the year covering the NFL. They plan my workouts for me based on my mood, my vibe, and also my favorite instructors. So make sure you check it out and use it, because it also helps you correct your form in real time, and it maximizes your reps. It counts your reps so that you can do it smarter, safer, and more efficient. Let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
David, still much to get into on this Buy or Sell Tuesday. A lot of storylines and overreactions we haven't got to touch on today. And I mean, we probably will continue this conversation going into shows later on this week, just because there's a lot of big topics this team has to tackle right now. But thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen. If you need a second listen, make sure to check out Locked On NFL. If you want to see everything that's going on around the league, there's 2 shows a day with Tony Wiggins and also Tyler Rowland, who give you 2 very different perspectives on the league on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from. Let's get to this one, David. We have a voicemail here that when I heard it seemed crazy. Then I looked at the schedule and I'm like, man, I really hope this isn't the way things go down.
Hey, guys. Brian here, longtime listener. Love the podcast. After yesterday's game, my buy or sell is that with 6 games remaining, the Chargers, if nothing changes, would be lucky to go 1-5 to end the season. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for everything you do.
Man, I mean, I don't know if I'd say they'd be lucky to go 1-5 down the stretch of the season, but I think the point here, David, is like I kind of opened up the show with, there's 6 games left, and with the way this team is playing coming off of that game, it's getting really, really hard to kind of see the guaranteed wins or, games you feel really good about going down the stretch.
Yeah, they show up like they showed up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, then yeah, they will be lucky to win one of their remaining 6 games, because that team right there can't compete with anybody. Like they did nothing right. Like that team absolutely needs to die and never show up again. Like they need to bring back the physical type of football team that we saw earlier in the season. And I think, yeah, you look at it, obviously the Raiders, Eagles, Chiefs, Cowboys, Texans, Broncos, all those teams have, different reasons why they, are cause for concern. I think that there's several tough games there in there, even with the Cowboys record not looking as good as you might think. That offense is for real. The Texans, same thing. That defense is deadly, still is, and it's going to be a challenge. We saw that last year. They're still that good. The Eagles, just a really good football team all around, and the Chiefs are always going to be a tough matchup. They know you very, very well, and the Broncos, #1 defense in the league, really, really good pass rush, and a quarterback who I guess is doing just enough to be able to win games for them. So, no real easy games besides, the Raiders. And, even then you can't overlook them because they're going to show up for an AFC West opponent. But, yeah, there's going to be some really tough games in there, and the Chargers have to make sure that they are locked in and ready to go every single week. If not, then we're going to see more Jacksonville Jaguars games than we want to.
I think that's why the last game was so maddening, is that if you win that game, you get to 8-3 on the season, and you're looking for 2 wins out of that final 6 stretch. And that feels a lot easier than trying to find 3, which is probably what's going to be the magic number for you. And I just think that, yeah, like, there's no excuse to lose to the Raiders. The Chargers have shown they can beat teams like the Raiders so far this year. I still expect them to win that game, and I'll pick them to win in that game.
Yeah.
After that, man, like, every team you brought up has a good argument to why they could take the Chargers down, given that we don't know which team is going to show up week to week. Like, if you're playing against the Chiefs, the Eagles, or the Broncos tomorrow, you're not picking the Chargers to win those games. I don't know if you could pick the Texans or even over the Cowboys and feel really good about it, because the Chargers have struggled with really good defenses, and they've struggled with really good offenses.
Yeah.
5 out of the last 6 teams that you're going to play are going to bring one of those to the table. That's just the facts, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I can't tell you how disappointing it would be if the Chargers win on a 1-6 stretch, because that's what it would be, obviously, coming off a loss to end this season and still feel like they're going in the right direction.
Yeah.
But, like, man, like I said, like, I don't think they're going to lose all of those games that are going to be tough games for them. But it's hard to say they're going to win more than half or even guarantee they're going to win half. But let's get to this one here from Jackson, who says, overreaction for buy or sell. The best case scenario for this Chargers team is a first-round playoff exit. With a brutal backstretch of their schedule and the lack of consistency this roster has shown, they don't have what it takes to win in the playoffs. David, buy or sell?
Yeah, I mean, it's not the best case scenario, obviously. And also, like, you want to do everything you can to get to the playoffs, because once you get there, anything can happen. You just need a ticket to the dance, and then after that, it's 1v1. You win, you go, you move on, you lose, you go home, right? So, yeah, I think obviously looking at the team's deficiencies, their inability to stop the run, and really, really big issues, being consistent on offense, that stuff gets exploited in the playoffs. So if they don't figure it out in this last, 7-game stretch, then this is a team that you can't feel confident that they're going to be able to win a playoff game. Like, they have to at least improve upon these issues before you can feel at all that, like, they would be able to pick up one of those wins.
Yeah, I mean, I'm buying this as far as, like, I think what he's saying here is the best realistic scenario for this team. Like, obviously, anyone can have a 2011 Giants run where you back into the playoffs and you go win the Super Bowl. Sure, that could happen once in a blue moon. What usually happens is the best teams go and win the Super Bowl, and the teams that are the best built go and play and win in the Super Bowl, right? That's what it is. If we're basing it off that, yeah, it does feel like for this roster, even if they find a way to kind of get themselves into the playoffs at this point, that would be the kind of crowning achievement for this season, because I don't see, like, what playoff team do you feel good that they're going to beat? Like, I don't think there's a team in there right now outside of the Steelers, right, who probably won't even still hold that division by the end of things, that you feel you could actually say, hey, the Chargers are going to beat that team. Like, the Patriots, the Broncos, the Chiefs, maybe if you didn't see that last stinker performance and know they have that in them, maybe you could maybe make that argument, but, like, no, it does feel like that is kind of what the ceiling for this team is with their current deficiencies. So I think that's kind of where it's at right now. But it does lead to this fear from Durd the Nerd saying, buy or sell, the Chargers would be better off missing the playoffs than going and losing in the first round. This one, I'm still going to stick with my stance of just, it's better to make the playoffs and see what can happen. But, like, obviously in this scenario, he's saying, if you know you're going to lose in the first round of the playoffs, is it better off missing the playoffs? David, what do you think?
No, even then, absolutely not. There are only a handful of teams that earn the right to be able to make it to the playoffs. I don't care if I know I'm going to lose when I get there or not. That means that I did enough during the regular season to earn my right to get there. So that's my stance.
Yeah, I mean, I've said that before, that I think that it's more important to kind of build a foundation and a culture with the Chargers that, they haven't made the playoffs in back-to-back years since 2010.
Yeah.
Like, you could end that this year just by making the playoffs, even if you lose. And I think that, just even, like, as far as what they're able to do, yeah, I mean, it would suck to go there and lose, obviously. But to be able to break that stretch and to feel like, okay, now we have a coach and a quarterback combination that every year, even if we lose our two kind of, all pro talented tackles, can still take that team to a playoff spot. I think that means something. And I think just the worst part about something like this is it just continues the narrative that Justin Herbert can't win a playoff game.
Yeah.
And like in this messed up way, it's almost better to not make the playoffs. And from a narrative perspective, it's better to not make the playoffs like a Joe Burrow did last year than make it and lose, right? That, like, if LeBron gets to 6 rings, right, he's still never going to be Jordan because
Right.
Jordan was 6-0.
Right.
LeBron making it to the finals more would be a detriment to his argument as the greatest of all time, even though he won the same amount. All the times that Michael Jordan got bounced out in the Eastern Conference Finals, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Everyone cares about the 6-0 once he got there, and I think
Right.
that is kind of a weird way that this kind of thing works just as far as the narrative goes with Justin Herbert. But, like, you shouldn't, if you're the Chargers, care about that anyways. Like, obviously, you should be trying to break that, but, like,
Sure.
I think the really only good argument for this, besides just obviously getting a better draft pick, sure, is better. But, I mean, at that point, if you're talking about you're losing anyways, you're talking about maybe a couple of spots, hit or miss, basically, like that you're going to have better in the draft. The bigger thing is missing the playoffs might inspire changes that don't happen if you make the playoffs.
This is true.
Could making the playoffs allow the Chargers to talk themselves in to guys that maybe would not be with the team in 2026, players, personnel, coaching staff, whoever, because they said, hey, but Greg Roman made the playoffs without Joel and Rashawn Slater, right? It's the same thing. Are you winning in spite of these people, or are you winning because of them? It's my argument when we said, talked about the interior offensive line going into the season. It's my argument now. Like, if this organization can't parse, like, hey, we barely got to the playoffs, but our offense is holding us back and we can't reach our potential there, do we still run it back with these same guys, even though, it's still the same issue whether you make the playoffs or you miss the playoffs by one game? That's the best argument I could see for not making the playoffs.
That's a great point, though.
And at the same time, Justin Herbert having to learn a new offense, all of those things, like, yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, obviously, but like that would be the only thing that scares me is the Chargers talking themselves into fool's gold if they make the playoffs and then lose just because they found a way to make it. But that's going to wrap things up on today's show. The good news is we have a great show for you guys planned tomorrow, getting into our bye-week playbook, what the Chargers must improve during their bye, because a lot of the conversation today is based on what the game was we just saw. And the Chargers, down this stretch, will be able to prove us wrong. Will be able to make me shut my mouth about how good this team could be, because they're going to play some good games, good teams down the stretch where they could make me eat my words, and I'm looking forward to them trying to do that. But I think what this bye week has to bring is find your offensive line combination and roll with it. Find the best of the guys you have. Find a way to stop the run. If you're Jesse Minter's defense, try something else out. This is the only chance in season you have to make major changes like the ones we need to see from this team. And tomorrow we're getting into all that. So to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as well as finding the show every day on all of our social media where you can hit us up for fan shows like this at Locked On LAC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. Thank you guys, as always, especially when things are down and tough, for making us your first listen. Even when it feels sometimes easier to not listen to Chargers content, we know how much you guys enjoy us by you being here to vent with us. So we'll be back here tomorrow with our bye week playbook. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.